Hello all and welcome to the GMAT Advanced Target 700 Plus series by Career Kata. Today we are going to see the second part of the whole verbal part of the GMAT Advanced program. And this is in continuation to the last video where we had talked about scientific passage. So today we are again going to talk about a specific type of scientific passage. This is the kind of scientific passage that often comes across in the GMAT and is based on evolution as well as the geological time scale. It talks about the different times that have been there in the journey of the planet. It talks about the various epochs, the various eons, the various kinds of species that have basically been here. And it is a fairly common topic that confuses a lot of aspirants. So let's jump right in and look at a passage that we have again taken from the GMAT Verbal Review. So let's quickly read the passage. Now it says microwear patterns found on the teeth of long extinct specimens of the primate species Australopithecine may provide evidence about their diets. For example, on the basis of tooth microwear patterns, Walker dismisses Joly's hypothesis that Australopithecines ate hard seeds. Now, as soon as we have come here, we have to notice that we are talking about two different hypotheses. You have a guy called Walker who's dismissing another guy, Joly's hypothesis. So in the first paragraph itself, the passage has introduced two different theories. Okay. Now, Joly's hypothesis is that this particular species, and if you remember what I told you in the last video, it's not necessary to remember the exact minute detail of a particular species. You can refer to it as this particular species, right? The Australopithecines. Now, Joly is very clearly saying that they ate hard seeds, and Walker is very strongly dismissing. Dismisses is a very, very strong word, which means Walker is definitely not agreeing with whatever Joly is trying to say here. Okay. Now, he also disputes Szalai's suggestion. Okay. So note here, now we have another party which is there, which is Szalai. All right. So now what are the three parties that we have? We have Joly, who said that Australopithecines, they ate hard seeds. Walker dismissed that. We have Szalai's suggestion that the heavy enamel of the Australopithecine teeth. Okay, so here is another fact. Now, whenever you keep reading such passages, you must also keep pointing out to what is a fact, what is an inference, what is a data point, and so on and so forth. Okay, the heavy enamel of Australopithecine teeth is an adaptation to bone crunching, since both seed cracking and bone crunching produce distinctive microwear characteristics on tooth. Now, Szalai is saying that there is heavy enamel on the Australopithecine teeth, and that is an adaptation to bone crunching. And because both crunching and seed cracking, they both require, they kind of produce similar microwear patterns, and it can be assumed that Szalai, when he studied the microwear patterns, found that these guys had the same kind of microwear patterns as you see in bone crunching and seed cracking. His conclusion that Australopithecines were frugivores is based upon his observation that the tooth microwear characteristics of East African Australopithecine specimens are indistinguishable from that of chimpanzees or orangutans, which are commonly assumed to be frugivorous primates. Okay, now what is Szalai's primary suggestion? His suggestion is that the Australopithecines were frugivores. Okay, Joly said that they ate hard seeds. Szalai is saying that they were frugivores. Okay, essentially they were eating basically fruit and the seed that was there within them. Okay, now why is he saying that? So now we have more light on the study that he has conducted. He is saying that East African Australopithecine specimens. Okay, mark that you have a fact here. It is talking about a very specific species of the Australopithecine. It is talking about the East African Australopithecine. All right, and they are indistinguishable from those of chimpanzees and orangutans. Okay, now we don't know which chimpanzees and orangutans are being talked about. Are they the East African ones, or they are probably from some other part of the world? We don't know. All right, let's see how we proceed in the passage and whether we'll get some more information about this. However, research on the diets of contemporary primates suggests that microwear studies may have limited utility in determining the foods that are actually eaten. Now we have a passage that is actually doubting the whole way in which all of these three gentlemen have approached the food habits of this particular primate. For example, insect eating, which can cause distinct microwear patterns, would not cause much tooth abrasion in modern baboons, who eat only soft-bodied insects rather than hard-bodied insects. In addition, the diets of current omnivorous primates vary considerably depending on the environments that different groups within a primate species inhabit. If Australopithecines were omnivores too, we might expect to find considerable population variation in their tooth microwear patterns. Thus, Walker's description of possible Australopithecine diets may need to be expanded to include a much more diverse diet. Okay, so now what is the last paragraph that it is saying? It is kind of casting a doubt on the whole methodology that has been discussed in the first two paragraphs. Okay, it is saying that you have different kinds of variations. Okay, even if somebody is eating insects, there are two different type of insects that somebody might be eating. So if one species is eating soft-bodied insects, okay, there might not be much tooth abrasion. Okay, if you eat soft-bodied insects, there is not much tooth abrasion. Okay, now if you are eating hard-bodied insects, there might be a lot of tooth abrasion. All right. Similarly, you can find a lot of considerable population variation. Okay, which means if you pick up a large enough sample, you will see one subgroup has different types of microwear patterns and another subgroup has different types of microwear patterns. Okay, thus Walker's description of possible Australopithecine diets may need to be expanded to include a much more diverse diet. All right, so armed with this information, let's just quickly look at what are the questions, and then if needed we will come back to some particular parts of the paragraph. All right. According to the passage, Walker and Cesale disagree on which of the following points. Okay, let's come back to the passage. Okay, it is talking about Walker and Cesale. Let's look at what these two people had to say. Okay, Walker dismissed Jolly's assumption that they ate hard teeth. Cesale was saying that you have heavy enamel of Australopithecine teeth, and that is an adaptation to bone crunching. Okay. Now, what exactly is Walker saying? I don't think we can find any evidence of what exactly is the diet that Walker is suggesting here. Okay, let's very quickly look at whether Walker is suggesting something. Okay, so here we have, okay, he says he also disputes Cesale's assumption that it is an adaptation to bone crunching, since bone crunching produces microwear patterns. His conclusion, who is he? He is basically, Walker. Walker dismisses Jolly's hypothesis. He also disputes. Who is he? He is Walker. What is this pronoun referring to? Again, Walker. So what does this imply? It says that Walker is saying that Australopithecines were frugivores. All right. Now let's come back to the question. It says Walker and Cesale disagree on which of the following pointers. Okay, let's look at the options. The structure and composition of Australopithecine teeth. Now, this is a very, very easy example to knock off. The structure and composition of the teeth is not talked about anywhere. Is there any mention of the structure and composition of the teeth? No. We are saying that the teeth have different kind of patterns on them, which have probably been created because of the wear and tear that they went through. We are not discussing what was the teeth made of. Okay. So this becomes an easy option to knock off. The kind of conclusions that can be drawn from the microwear patterns on Australopithecine teeth. Okay. This is kind of like a very, very close option. Okay. Both of them are drawing different assumptions about the food habits of the Australopithecines. Okay. So we will kind of keep this option as one of our options that we will consider. The idea that fruit was a part of the Australopithecine diet. Okay. Now this is also a bit close, though this is not really the main point on which these guys are digressing. Okay, what is the main point that these guys are looking at? These guys are saying, where did the microwear patterns come from? Okay, what were the activities that were causing the microwear patterns to go? But again, just like option B, we will also keep option C in consideration. The extent to which seed cracking and bone crunching produce similar microwear patterns on teeth. No, this is not something on which these two guys are differing. You know, if you look at what is the extent to which the author of the passage is kind of trying to look at what is the difference in the microwear patterns of seed cracking and bone crunching. For the purpose of this passage, both of these activities are assumed to have the same kind of impact on the microwear patterns of the teeth. All right, let's look at option E. Option E says the function of the heavy enamel on Australopithecine teeth. Now we have kind of like three very similar sounding options. Okay, I'm not saying all three options are correct, but we have similar sounding options. This is where tough questions start to become a bit tricky. Okay, now we have seen that all of these guys are getting their conclusions based on the microwear patterns. Okay, which very well points to option B. Okay, what is the conclusion that can be drawn from the microwear patterns on Australopithecine teeth? Okay, now let's look at what is the primary point of disagreement between Walker and Szalay. For that, let's come back to the passage. Okay, if you look at this passage closely, it says he also disputes Szalay's suggestion that the heavy enamel of Australopithecine teeth is an adaptation to bone crunching. Okay, what is the primary point of disagreement here? The Szalay's suggestion that heavy enamel is an adaptation to bone crunching. He believes that yes, heavy enamel is there, but that is not an adaptation to bone crunching. Let's come back to the option. Option E says the function of the heavy enamel on Australopithecine teeth. Okay, are you seeing how minutely we have to get to the answer here? The heavy enamel of Australopithecine teeth is an adaptation. Now that can lead to different kind of conclusions about what they were eating, which is kind of like option B. Okay, and in some ways option C. Okay, these two are not wrong options, just that option E is a much better choice as compared to option B and option C, because it takes the whole idea of disagreement head on. Okay, this brings us to a very important lesson in all of GMAT questions, that whenever you are faced with 5 options, you will often come across 2 options that will be very similar sounding. In our case, we came across 3 options that were very close and could all have been possible answers, or they will probably look at possible answers when you are appearing in the actual exam. But what you have to do, you have to read the fine print. Okay, the fine print is what makes a difference between a average GMAT score versus a 700 plus GMAT score. Okay, which also is the primary objective of this series. Let's look at the next question. The passage suggests that Walker's research indicated which of the following about Australopithecine teeth. Okay, let's come back to Walker's research. Okay, Walker is the guy who is dismissing Joly's hypothesis that they ate hard seeds. He is also disputing Szalay's suggestion that they were bone crunchers. Okay, so what are the two things that Walker has been dismissing? Joly's hypothesis of hard seeds and Szalay's suggestion that it was because of bone crunching. Okay, let's look at the option. They had microwear characteristics indicating that fruit constituted only a small part of their diet. So this is a very easy option to knock off. Fruit being a small part of their diet is nothing that Walker is suggesting. Okay, so Walker is kind of suggesting that their primary diet consisted of fruit. Okay, his conclusion that Australopithecines were frugivores, fruit eaters, right? So he's saying that these Australopithecines were primarily fruit eaters. They lacked microwear characteristics associated with seed eating and bone crunching. Bingo. This basically is the crux of the whole thing. Okay. He's attacking both assumptions. Okay. What is the first assumption? The seed eating assumption. Who gave the seed eating assumption? Jolly. Jolly gave the seed eating assumption. And who gave the bone crunching assumption? Sazale. Okay. Sazale gave the bone crunching assumption. Okay, so we have kind of found out a very good option choice for our answer. Let's quickly read the other ones and figure out if they are a better choice. They had microwear characteristics that differed in certain ways from the microwear patterns of chimpanzees and orangutans. No, not at all. In fact, in the passage, you can see that he talks about the fact that it is actually very, very similar. They are indistinguishable from those of chimpanzees and orangutans. Okay, indistinguishable meaning you cannot distinguish between what came from chimpanzees and what came from Australopithecines. Okay, which means indistinguishable is the opposite of differing in. Okay, so option C is the exact opposite. Let's look at option D. They had microwear characteristics suggesting that the diet of Australopithecines varied from one region to another. Now, this has been talked about in the passage, but is it something that Walker's research is indicating? No. Let's quickly look at the passage. When we were reading the passage, we saw that the third paragraph basically casts a doubt on the entire way that this thing is being looked at. Okay, it is talking about different variations because of geography, different variations within a species, different variations even when they are eating something like hard-bodied and soft-bodied insects, right? So this is an issue that the author of the passage is discussing, but this is not something that Walker's research is trying to prove. In fact, if this is true, even Walker's research can be put in question. All right. So definitely Walker's research has not indicated that there is a lot of variation from one region to another. Let's look at the last option. They lack the microwear characteristics distinctive of modern frugivores. Is it saying that? No. Again, let's come back to the passage. His conclusion that Australopithecines were frugivores is based upon the observation that microwear of each animal were indistinguishable from those of chimpanzees and orangutans. He is clearly pointing that they were frugivorous primates. Okay. The modern frugivores are referred to in the last part. Again, this is what the author has brought in. Our guy is basically trying to say that they were probably frugivores. Were they like modern frugivores or were they like primitive frugivores is something that we cannot decipher. Okay, what does he mean by just being frugivores is something that we cannot decipher. Okay, now this last part of the passage is talking about modern frugivores, but it is talking about modern frugivores in a totally different sense or in a totally different setting. Okay, and it is trying to prove a whole together different argument, which is not really the context of the question that we have here. Hence, option B becomes a clear option choice. Let's look at the third question. It says the passage suggests that which of the following would be true of studies of tooth microwear patterns conducted on modern baboons. Okay. Now this is basically talking about what we discussed in the last part of the passage. Okay. Let's look at the options. They would inaccurately suggest that some baboons eat more soft-bodied than hard-bodied insects. No, this is not the option. Nobody is talking about the accuracy versus inaccuracy of the assumption of a diet based on soft-bodied and hard-bodied insects. This is a very easy option to knock off. Option B, they would suggest that insects constitute the largest part of some baboons' diets. No, again, there is nothing in the passage that talks about that insects constitute the largest part of some baboons' diets. Okay, they would reveal that there are no significant differences in tooth microwear patterns among baboon populations. Absolutely wrong. We have seen in the third passage, that it clearly says that there can be a lot of differences. There can be distinct microwear patterns. Okay, modern baboons who eat soft-bodied versus modern baboon who ate hard-bodied insects. Okay, it depends on environment. It depends on different groups within a primate species, so on and so forth. Okay, they would adequately reflect the extent to which some baboons consume certain types of insects. Okay, this is the option that is worth putting notice to. They would inadequately reflect the extent to which some baboons consume certain types of insects. Why would this happen? This would happen because in modern baboons you would see considerable variety. This is all what the last passage keeps saying, that there will be a lot of variety. You will see one subgroup eating something else. You will see another subgroup that will be eating completely different things. You will see a lot of variety in terms of, as we discussed, groups, and a lot of variety in terms of geography. Okay, so of course you will probably get some readings, but they will probably be inadequate, right? They would indicate that baboons in certain regions eat only soft-bodied insects, whereas baboons in other regions eat hard-bodied insects. Okay, now this again is wrong. Okay, we cannot say that in a certain region, a particular species is only eating soft-bodied insects. What did we say? There is variation because of geography. Even in geography, there could be a variation because of group. You can have a variation that is caused by geography plus group. Okay, let's call geography as two different geographies as G1 and G2, and let's call these groups as small g1 and small g2. Okay, so you can have probably 4 combinations. You can have g1 g2. Okay, you can have g1 g1. You can have g2 g1, and you can have g2 g2. Now all these 4 guys can probably have 4 different microwear patterns. Hence, the option that it would inadequately reflect the extent to which some baboons consume certain types of insects becomes our final answer. Right? So as you would have seen, some of these passages can be extremely tricky, both from the point of view of including a lot of scientific information, also from the point of having different points of view by different scientists, and a opinion that is put in by the author himself. Okay, combining these and looking at different question types can actually really mean the difference between, as I said, you getting these questions wrong and the whole adaptive framework of GMAT throwing you off track from your desired score, to you getting all of these options right and progressively scoring more and more on the GMAT. Now, in the next video, what we would do is that we would continue this particular passage. We will look at some additional questions because, this is one of the trickier passages that can come in, and we'll try to solve them as well. Okay. So I'll see you in the next video. Till then, keep learning.